An apology that lasted only hours. A president who cannot control his own military. A supreme leader whose successor must be chosen in 24 hours. And missiles still flying over Gulf cities while a government claims it wants peace. What you are watching unfold in Iran right now is not just a political crisis. It is the complete collapse of a command structure that has held the Middle East on edge for decades. And the world is only beginning to understand what comes next. Stay with me for the next 15 minutes, because this story will reshape the entire region, and it may already be too late to stop it. On the 7th, Iranian President Masoud Pezeshkian stood before cameras and delivered words almost no Iranian president has ever spoken publicly. He apologized. He told neighboring Gulf states that Iran would stop its attacks. He said a temporary leadership committee had approved a ceasefire, provided those nations did not strike Iran first. And then, in an extraordinary moment, he looked into the camera and said, "I personally apologize to neighboring countries that were attacked by Iran." For a brief moment, the world exhaled. But that moment lasted only hours. Because while Pezeshkian was still speaking, while his words were still being broadcast, Iran's military was preparing its next move. Missiles and drones were already in motion. And before the day was over, fires broke out in residential buildings in Manama, the capital of Bahrain. Dubai reported that debris from an intercepted projectile fell onto a vehicle in the Al Barsha area, killing an Asian driver who had nothing to do with any of this. An apology, then more attacks. That contradiction tells you everything you need to know about the real crisis inside Iran today. To understand why Pezeshkian's apology collapsed within hours, you need to understand how power actually works in Iran. Most countries have a straightforward structure. A president or prime minister leads the government and commands the military. Decisions flow from the top down. Iran does not work that way. In Iran, the president is largely a ceremonial figure. He manages domestic policy, represents the nation publicly, and speaks to the international community. But he does not control the most powerful military force in the country, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, known as the IRGC. The IRGC answers to the supreme leader. For decades, that was Ayatollah Ali Khamenei. The supreme leader holds final authority over military operations, foreign policy, and the most critical decisions of the Iranian state. This means that when Pezeshkian promised to halt attacks, he was making a promise he did not have the power to keep. The Revolutionary Guard does not report to him. They were not bound by his words. And hardline factions within the military made that crystal clear when they publicly responded to his apology with 3 blunt words: "We do not apologize." Pezeshkian himself later acknowledged the breakdown, telling reporters, "The military acted independently." That is not a small admission. That is a president confessing on the record that he does not control his own country's armed forces. Now add one more layer to this crisis, and this is the layer that changes everything. Khamenei, the supreme leader who held Iran's power structure together for over 3 decades, is no longer in a position to command. Whether through death, incapacitation, or political collapse, a power vacuum has opened at the very top of the Iranian government. And without the supreme leader to issue orders, the chain of command has fractured. The president is making promises the military ignores. Hardline factions are acting on their own judgment. And Gulf neighbors, Bahrain, the UAE, Qatar, are absorbing the consequences of a country that is, at this moment, fighting itself as much as it is fighting anyone else. The New York Times captured it clearly, noting that internal divisions within Iran's leadership have been fully exposed, and that it remains deeply unclear whether Pezeshkian has the authority to issue apologies or halt airstrikes at all. This is what a power struggle looks like in real time. Not a clean political debate. Not a formal leadership challenge. But missiles flying, fires burning, and a president whose words carry no operational weight with the forces that matter most. Inside Iran, one thing is now moving with extraordinary urgency. Iran's semi-official Fars news agency reported that the Assembly of Experts, an 88-member body with the constitutional authority to elect a new supreme leader, would convene within 24 hours. Hossein Mohappari, A member of that assembly stated publicly, "Under divine guidance, we hope to finalize Khamenei's successor within 24 hours. We will soon convene a meeting to discuss this agenda." 24 hours to choose the next supreme leader of Iran. To put that in perspective, when Khomeini died in 1989, the process of selecting Khamenei was intense, contested, and conducted under enormous internal pressure. The stakes of that choice shaped the entire Middle East for the next 35 years. Now Iran is attempting to make a decision of equal or greater consequence in a single day, while missiles are still in the air, while Gulf cities are under attack, and while the president and the military are openly contradicting each other. The person chosen in that room will inherit command of the IRGC. They will determine whether the attacks continue or stop. They will decide whether Iran moves toward negotiation or deeper conflict. And they will do so starting from a position of maximum internal chaos. Let us step back and look at what is happening across the Gulf right now. Bahrain, one of the smallest nations in the region, watched fires burn in its capital city. The UAE, one of the most economically significant financial hubs in the world, had debris fall on its streets. Qatar, host to major international operations and diplomatic missions, faced successive strikes. These are not minor incidents. These are sovereign nations being struck by Iranian missiles and drones, while an Iranian president is simultaneously apologizing for those very strikes. The Gulf Cooperation Council states have spent years managing their relationship with Iran, carefully balancing security concerns with economic ties, always watching the IRGC with caution. What they are watching now is something they have not faced before, an Iran that cannot speak with one voice. That creates a specific kind of danger. When a country has a clear leadership and clear intentions, even hostile ones, neighboring states can calculate and respond. But when a country is issuing apologies from one side of its government while launching attacks from another, nobody can predict what comes next. That unpredictability is now the most dangerous thing in the region. Beyond the Gulf, the international community is observing this crisis with a mixture of alarm and uncertainty. The question being asked in Washington, Brussels, Beijing, and Moscow right now is the same question Pezeshkian cannot fully answer. Who is in charge of Iran? If the Revolutionary Guard is operating independently of the presidency, then diplomacy with the Iranian president becomes almost meaningless on military matters. Any agreement he signs, any ceasefire he announces, any apology he offers, the IRGC is not bound by it. That fundamentally changes how the international community can engage with this crisis. The selection of a new supreme leader will be the single most consequential moment in this entire situation. If a pragmatist emerges, someone willing to restore command discipline and honor the president's ceasefire language, there is a path toward de-escalation. If a hardliner consolidates power and formalizes the IRGC's independent direction, the region faces a far more dangerous chapter. Every government with interests in the Middle East is waiting for that 24-hour window to close. And every hour that passes without a successor announcement is another hour in which Iran remains, effectively, without a unified command. So where does this go? There are several paths forward, and they lead to very different outcomes. In the first scenario, the Assembly of Experts moves quickly and selects a supreme leader who can consolidate authority over the IRGC. The new leader honors, or at least acknowledges, the president's ceasefire language. Attacks slow. Gulf states pull back from the edge. A fragile calm returns while Iran restructures internally. In the second scenario, the assembly is unable to reach consensus quickly. Hardline factions within the IRGC use the vacuum to act with even greater independence. Attacks escalate. Gulf states begin coordinated defensive responses. And the international community faces a military situation that is no longer controlled by any single actor. In the third scenario, and this is the one analysts are watching most closely, a new supreme leader is chosen quickly, but from the hardline camp. The IRGC receives formal backing for its operations. The president's apology is officially overruled. And Iran enters a new phase under a leadership that is more aggressive, not less, precisely because it feels it needs to demonstrate strength after a period of internal chaos. Any of these outcomes is possible. And the decision point is within 24 hours. Here is the core truth of this moment. Iran is not simply in a political crisis. It is experiencing a structural breakdown in the chain of command at the worst possible time, while active military operations are underway, while neighboring nations are absorbing casualties, and while the world is watching to see whether this spirals into something far larger. A president apologized. The military kept firing. A supreme leader's seat is empty. And an 88-member assembly has 24 hours to make a decision that will define the next era of Middle Eastern geopolitics. The apology meant nothing without the authority to back it. The ceasefire means nothing without the command structure to enforce it. And the next supreme leader of Iran means everything for the Gulf, for the region, and potentially for global stability. This story is not over. It is only beginning. If this analysis gave you clarity on a situation that most coverage is making confusing, share this with someone who needs to understand what is actually happening. And stay informed, because the next 24 hours will matter.